Welcome to the Champions of Active Women podcast. In this podcast, we will interview individuals who have been successful within athletics and beyond. We hope that these interviews will encourage and inspire girls and women to be active for a lifetime, to reach their goals, and to break new barriers in sport and life. This podcast is brought to you by the Active Women's Health Initiative and the Sports Medicine Research Institute at the University of Kentucky. The mission of the Active Women's Health Initiative is to optimize health and promote physical activity and wellness for girls and women across the lifespan. We hope you enjoy our conversations and join us in understanding women's health today to ensure women's health tomorrow. Jaime Gordon is entering his 18th season as the head coach of women's volleyball at Morehead State University and has recently been named Director of Athletics. Jaime led the women's volleyball team to 7 Ohio Valley Conference regular season titles and coached the 2011 and 2013 team to an NCAA tournament appearance. He has 400 career collegiate coaching victories and was named the Ohio Valley Conference Coach of the Year in 2003, 2010, and 2012. Prior to coming to Morehead State University, Jaime was an assistant coach at the University of Kentucky, head coach of West Virginia Wesleyan, and got his start in coaching at Henry Clay High School. Jaime earned his bachelor's degrees in architecture and art history, a master's degree in sports management from the University of Kentucky, and is pursuing his doctorate in educational leadership from Morehead State. During his time at UK, he was a member of the men's club volleyball team, served as the team captain for 3 years, and in 1994 was selected as an alternate to the U.S. Olympic Festival team. So welcome, Jaime. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me.
You have been coaching volleyball for a long time, over 25 years. You played volleyball yourself through college. Could you just get us started by telling me about how you got your start in volleyball?
Yeah, I grew up in a basketball house. My father actually played basketball for the Cuban national team. And so ever since I can remember, I spent time, and I grew up in New York, being in Madison Square Garden, watching the Knicks, becoming a big basketball fan. Played baseball a little bit also growing up. And when I got into high school, found out that we were just starting a boys volleyball team within the high school. And it was a spring sport, and I thought that it would help with the basketball game and made sense with a lot of jumping and things like that. And I just fell in love with it. And coming out of high school, decided that I wanted to pursue architecture. And unfortunately, some of the places that I had opportunity to play with on a scholarship for volleyball didn't offer the architecture program. And that actually headed me all the way to Kentucky because of their architecture program. And they had an outstanding, very high reputation for their architecture program. And I wound up playing club volleyball for the University of Kentucky. And it wasn't a happy day in the Gordon household with my father. He wasn't happy that I made that switch, but definitely something that I've been very happy with the path that I've taken.
Yeah, and has clearly been something that has stayed with you throughout your life. And that really leads me to my next question. So you have bachelor's degrees in architecture and art history.
Mm-hmm.
Where did coaching come into play for you? That doesn't fall in line with either of those degrees naturally.
Yeah, I don't know for sure, but I would imagine that I might be the only Division I coach with a degree in architecture. But yeah, that was my passion, and that's what I wanted to do. And what I realized by being an athlete and a student, it was really the practice and the athletics and the connection with my team that got me through all the tough times of college, the demands of schoolwork, crazy relationships, and all of those things. And it was a refuge for me. And as I continued into my master's work, I started volunteering for the women's volleyball team at the University of Kentucky. And Kathy DeBoer was the head coach at that time. And I just kind of decided that this was more of my passion. And I wanted to be a part of that process of what athletics means for personal development as much as anything. And of course, I'm very competitive. I love to win, but that's not why I went the route of coaching, and it was probably more from a teaching perspective.
Yeah, so you mentioned Kathy, and Kathy is one of our board members and just an amazing advocate for women in sports and lots of other things. And could you talk about maybe other people in your life who were important for that decision to get into coaching or to continue in volleyball?
Yeah, kind of fall back to my father again. He gave me some good advice growing up, and it was find what you love to do and become good enough at it that somebody's willing to pay you for it. And
Love that.
I was faced with this kind of crossroads or decision in my life. It was finishing my master's, and initially from the architecture side, I wanted to design sporting facilities like stadiums and arenas and things like that. And so I finished up my master's in sports administration and had two job offers. One with an architecture firm, and then one was a Division II coaching job in West Virginia Wesleyan. And I thought back to my father's advice, and my volleyball and coaching was where my passion was, and so I decided to go that route. And it was funny when I told my father that that's what I was doing. He said, well, "What are you doing that for?" I said, "I'm just following your advice." And I told him that, and he said, "Yeah, but that was when you were going to be an architect, not a volleyball coach." So, I went down that route. Kathy, as you said, was had a huge impact, and she still is. I mean, I'm very close to her. Now that she's the executive director of the American Volleyball Coaches Association, I talk with her regularly, and interesting enough, she gave me some advice. I remember I was sitting in her office and told her that, "Hey, this is what I'm thinking of doing," and her advice to me was, "Don't do it." He's like, "Don't get into coaching." And it was about a year after I got a note in the mail from her saying, "Hey, thanks for not listening to my advice." And
That's
so,
awesome.
yeah, and she's been somebody that I lean on for counsel. When there's difficult decisions, and even now as I move into administrative role, I probably rely on her a little bit more because just the different type of network that you need as a administrator versus a coach.
Yeah. So thinking about your history in coaching, and you mentioned one of the reasons you wanted to be a coach was from a personal development, teaching perspective. Could you talk a little bit about your coaching philosophy?
Yeah, it's changed. When I first started coaching, I had no clue what I was doing. You go in and you think, um, I know the game, I know strategies, I know drills, I know how to run a practice. But I remember my very first year, within 6 months of becoming a head coach, I dealt with um, one of my freshmen whose two best friends committed suicide.
Oh my God.
I had a uh, player who had a stalker, of which we had to get the police involved, and it was pretty intense. And then I had a player who was pregnant and had tried to self abort,
Oh
and
my gosh.
opened up to me for the first time of saying, "Hey, this is something that I'm dealing with." Hadn't told her family or anything like that. And you quickly realize that coaching is not about the game, and it's not about sport. It's about life. And um, that was very quickly impactful for me. And then I would say that the next critical moment was becoming a father, because it changes the lens of which you see the job that you do. And I'm blessed with two daughters myself, and so I always look and reflect: am I being the type of coach that I would want them to be, and that want them to have?
Mhm.
And that doesn't mean that I'm spoiling our players. Sometimes
Yep.
it's telling them what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. And so, as I've done that, and you think about uh, trying to help people develop into the best versions of themselves during the window that we have impact on them.
Mhm.
And I'm blessed to have 4 to 5 years of some of the most impactful time for young adults. And um, it's really something that I hold. I'm grateful for, but that I put a lot of time. And so I think you have to continue to educate yourself and develop your own skill sets as things change. I've grown into a much more of an encouraging coach. somebody who leads alongside of the team, or at least attempts to, instead of in front of the team. And I would say that probably a lot of what I attempt to do is teach and then empower our players to take on ownership of the process, and then guide and aid them in the process. So, it's not a quick one-liner or couple bullet points from a philosophy, more so than it is just applying everyday life to sport, and then the inverse of that, applying sport to everyday life.
Mm-hmm. So as you've worked with female athletes, starting in high school, but most of the time in college, what do you think some of the biggest challenges these young women are facing in their lives, and then also in sport, and as they're connected, as you just mentioned?
Sure. I would say one of my biggest challenges, especially with, we're getting 18-year-olds that come into the gym for the first time, and getting them to embrace failure is a real challenge. I think that our society has a tendency to put a different definition of perfection for women than they do men. It's much easier for me as a high school student to make mistakes and to do these things, and there's just boys being boys. But the pressure that we put on young women to do things the right way and to be perfect and things like that. And as you're developing in a sport, the only way that you get better is by failing and learning from those failures, and then making corrections and improving. And that is a big challenge, I think, for us as coaches now. And the other part, and I think this kind of ties in with it, is the definition of success or the definition of perfection. If I ask some of our players, give me the definition of perfection in academics, and they'll say 4.0 or 100% on a test. And they're looking at the result instead of that process. And to get them to understand and believe that perfection or success needs to be viewed differently. I had one of my athletes, student athletes, a couple years ago. She called me. I was driving down to Nashville to do a camp, and she was taking a summer class, and she's a 4.0 student, has never gotten a B. She's in her senior year. It's in her field, and it looks like she's going to get a B, maybe even a C in this class. And she calls me, and she's struggling, and she's saying, "Coach, I don't know what to do. I think I'm going to get a B, maybe even a C in this class." And I said, "Okay, Jesse, hold on. There's a couple questions for you. Are you working hard?" And she said, "Yeah, Coach, I'm working as hard as I ever have in any class." I said, "Okay. Are you learning stuff?" "Yeah, I'm learning an awful lot." "Okay, well, this is also in your major. So are you enjoying the material?" She's like, "Yeah, it's really, really interesting." I said, "So what's the problem?" She said, "The problem is I'm going to get a B." I said, "No, your definition of doing well in a class is all wrong. You're working really hard. You're enjoying the material, and you're learning. And so that is the success, and that's perfect." And she got a B in the class. She graduated a 3.97. And I think that class and that experience changed her, because it helped her understand that, you know what, I don't have to get all A's. I don't have to do these things. And I think when we can get young women to embrace that, we see I've seen just their development, all facets of their life just build exponentially.
That's a great example, and a great example of your coaching or teaching philosophy too, and where you put your focus and how you get your athletes to see that. So you were recently named Director of Athletics at Morehead State. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So now you have the perspective, not only a coach, but also an administrator. So I'm wondering if you could talk about why it's so important from an administrative perspective to continue to provide opportunities for women in sport.
Yeah, it's it's a challenge, and it's something that's in certain ways more difficult, but I'm excited about it because I have maybe an opportunity to impact more young people. And it's all about building culture. And so when you're a coach and you can control a lot of facets, it's not incredibly difficult to build that culture, because you get to recruit the types of people that you believe will fit into that culture. You can build a staff that will embrace that culture and reflect it. And then you manage every day, practice, competition, all of these things. Now as an administrator, it's at a much larger scale. And so I don't get to recruit every athlete that comes into Morehead State. I obviously, new coaches that come in, I'll get an opportunity to hire, but we have some, and they're all great people. And so I think the challenge for me is that how do we do that at a large scale? And, I've been faced, it's an interesting time to try and cut your teeth on administration when we're dealing with a pandemic, and then all of the social challenges and transformation that we're going through. And, one of the things that I think that I'm learning through this process is there are different avenues to impact these young people outside of the on the court stuff. So, we have a soccer player named Tia Williams, and she has really taken some initiative to try and make some change for social injustice and equality on our campus. And so now I can help her and be an advocate for her and a way to help her make some real change. And so it's a different capacity that I'm used to, but now I kind of find these new opportunities. And so, I think with any crisis, there's opportunities within that. And so we're trying to kind of find those, but hopefully my learning curve as an administrator won't be as long as it was as a coach.
We can all hope for that kind of growth, right? So if you're thinking about athletics and women in athletics, both from an athlete perspective as well as in coaching, where do you think we still need to make some progress?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think from the professional side, we need to get away from result-based pressures on coaching and more process-based. I think that as a coach and you have this tremendous amount of pressure to win matches and win championships and do these things. And as a result, the lifestyle that you have to take on involves a lot of sacrifice. And one of those sacrifices is family. It's time with your family. It's things like that. And I don't know that that's healthy for anybody, let alone men or women. And if we want to have more people that can impact the lives of these young people, I think we need to have the profession reflect life and work-life balance. And how do you balance those things? How do you incorporate family into your job, and how do you incorporate your job into your family? Do you have kids? As a head coach, I had one of our assistants had young kid, and we set a playpen in the gym, and so that her baby was right in there, and that was part of our culture. And so I think that we need to be able to establish some more work-life balance within the profession. I think from the athlete side, we've got to get away from this pressure of performance and that and validation and worth with things like even starting. The role that I play is on the court, or the role that I play is on the bench, or the role that I play is as a key player or as a support player. And I think that starts from a parental side of things. I think, I've got 2 daughters, and when they were growing up and they got involved in athletics, one of the things that we talked with our, parents and my in-laws was, listen, the first time you talk to them after some sort of game, just ask them, did they have fun? Because the natural thing is, hey, how'd it go? Did you win? And so we put these young people in this mindset already that in order for me to have approval or to make my grandparents proud of me, I had to win. versus, hey, we can start to define what that success is. And hey, did you have fun? Yeah, I had a great time. And then let them bring up the result on their own piece. And that's a real grassroots, and it's a real cultural change. But I think that's important, again, for all young people.
Mm-hmm. So, and then thinking about on the flip side, maybe more positively, where are we doing well? Where do you see that's really positive in college athletics or in sport in general for women?
I think one of the areas that we are doing really well in is allowing athletes to become themselves. They don't have to be this one thing. Okay. They don't have to model their athleticism after men. I can embrace who I am. I can embrace my femininity. I can embrace however I want to present myself and still be the athlete that I want. And that's okay. I don't know that was always the case. I mean, when I was in college, there was this kind of role and this persona that you had to play. And I think that's a really healthy place to be. I think that the other good strides that we're taking is that these are becoming also lifelong habits. That this is not just about a sport. It's about a lifestyle, and it's about healthy habits. I also think that we've probably gotten a lot better in kind of framing what a female athlete should even look like. What is their body type like? What is, and it's okay. We can show an incredible array of very successful athletes in different sports that look totally different, and that they can embrace whatever that is. And so I think we're making some good strides. Are we perfect at it? No. But I think there's real growth there.
So you've mentioned your daughter several times in our conversation today, and I'd be interested to hear, what lessons you hope they've learned from you as they were growing up, and even still today, on physical activity and participation in sport.
Yeah. So I've got two daughters. One who is entering her sophomore year, actually at the University of Kentucky.
Okay.
Then I have one who is entering her sophomore year in high school at Frederick Douglass. They have taken different routes in athletics. My oldest played volleyball, loved it, really was a great leader on the court, and was very tied into the social portion of it. It was a big part of her friendships and everything like that. She chose to follow more of her academic passions instead of her athletic ones. And then my youngest, she is all about athletics. She has dreams and aspirations of playing Division I volleyball. And really starting her freshman year, she started getting recruited by Division I institutions, and she is all in about that. And it's really interesting because even as a coach, they embraced what I did in two very different ways. My older daughter chose to sit in the stands, and she liked to be with everybody else and the other parents and families and stuff like that. A younger one on the bench in the locker room. She loved to be right into the middle of it. Yeah. And so it's exciting because I think both of them have taken very good, healthy approaches towards sport. We didn't guide them anywhere or any pressure to be involved in volleyball or anything else. And it's nice to see just two very different approaches to it. It'll be interesting to see how my younger one progresses and what happens there. I'm trying to recruit her. I don't know that we're going to get her, and it will be the worst possible recruiting job because I have breakfast with her every morning, and I'm probably violating so many recruiting
yeah,
rules.
I was going to say that must be really messy from a documentation standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, well, best of luck in that recruiting process. So thinking more broadly, what advice do you have for girls and women about playing sports or just being active for health?
Wow. I guess I'll kind of take some of the advice back to what my dad is find what you love to do, find what you have passion for, and then invest some of yourself in. Even for me, I stopped playing volleyball a lot earlier than some of even my teammates. And the reason for that is that I didn't handle not being able to do what my body used to do well, from a competitive standpoint. Like I knew what I wanted it to do, and now it's just not doing that.
Yep.
And so, since then, I ride bike. I do a lot of road biking and kayaking and things like that. And so I've tried to see, all right, what now do I want to do? And I think being able to find some of those things, I think the more that you make it a social and an enjoyment piece of doing it, versus some result piece that I'm doing this for something other than just the sheer pleasure of being active or exercising or being outdoors or going for a hike or doing whatever, or competing. One of the things that we did a couple years ago is that we added beach volleyball along as a sport. I can thank Kathy DeBoer for that. She helped push our team towards that. But that's been a great thing because that is a much more sustainable way to play volleyball, even in recreational standpoints and stuff like that, than on the indoor game and just the toll that it takes on your body. So I just think finding that something that you enjoy and again doing it for the pleasure and being in the moment versus some result that comes out of it.
It's great advice. Anything else you'd like to share with our audience today?
The one thing that I would maybe try to encourage, and this is something that to me I don't necessarily totally understand, and that is encourage people to support female athletes in competition. So watch some more women on TV, watch college volleyball and college soccer. It's very interesting. I've done some work with the NCAA and our Coaches Association from a marketing standpoint, and women's sports on TV is watched. The viewership is 80% men, just 20% women. And I think that there are some amazing things happening there that I would love to see more people get behind, enjoy, support. So just as a little plug there, watch a little bit more female sports in person on TV and really embrace what's happening out there.
Yeah, I love that plug. And we have a Girls Can outreach program, and we've been going with groups of girls to watch women's sporting events, and it's been a really powerful experience. And so maybe we'll have to take a trip to Morehead. It's not too far, and once everything gets started back up again.
No, and I think what it does is it provides great role models for young people. I'll just add one more story, and when you talk about that, the impact that somebody has, we were doing a youth clinic, and I had one of the players on our team, a 6'4", very tall woman, and she stands tall. She's proud of it. And one of the younger girls was tall, but she was kind of hunched over, and our player had gone over to her and said, "Hey, stand up tall." And she looked, and it was just this kind of aha moment for this kid. And 2 days later, I got a call from her father, and he was in tears because of the impact that this had. And he said, "My wife and I have been trying to get this message across to our kid to be proud of what she was, and we've had no success. And what your one player did in 30 seconds, we think is going to change her life." And so that exposure that these young girls can have, seeing young women compete and be proud and all those things is an incredible opportunity. So I'm really happy to hear, Dee, that you guys are doing that, and anything that we can do to assist in those efforts, I'd be happy to partner with you.
Awesome. Well, that's all I had. Anything else?
No, I appreciate the time.
Yeah, well, we thank you for being a supporter and advocate for women in sports, and best of luck as you take on this new role as the Director of Athletics.
Thanks, Dee. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Champions of Active Women podcast. This podcast is brought to you by the Active Women's Health Initiative and was produced by the Faculty Media Depot at the University of Kentucky. If you enjoyed this episode, you can listen and subscribe to all of our episodes wherever you find your podcasts. For up-to-date information about the Active Women's Health Initiative, you can find us on social media at UKAWHI. Thank you for supporting us as we work to promote health and physical activity among girls and women across the lifespan.